tomorrow is launching the Quilliam Foundation, which is backed by SSA, has been mentioned. And I'm interested to know whether the government's actually backing that foundation and what it's doing. That's on the one hand. And secondly, on the subject of Islamism and Islamists, the Muslim Council of Britain historically have been backed by the government, and I'm just wanting to know whether going forward with questions being raised about that organisation and what it's really about, whether the Muslim Council of Britain and such organisations are going to be continued to be supported with any credibility by government or opposition type parties.
Well, this is, as you can see, not a government forum. It's entirely a matter for Andrew and Michael as to whether or not they want to answer it, but nobody here can speak authoritatively for the government. We wanted a rather wider debate than that. Well, I would like to express views about backing the Muslim Council of Britain.
I mean, I can't give you, in your point about the Ed Hussein new foundation, I can't give you a categoric answer to that tonight. But I was reading Dennis's press release in which he says Ed Hussein, whose new Quilliam Foundation, is already meeting with the kind of hate and misrepresentation which David Edgar overlooked in his attack on, etc., etc. I mean, we obviously would want to support free speech and would be appalled if those hate and misrepresentation which Dennis refers to were to go unchallenged. So I don't know whether that's an answer to your question. I rather think it isn't, but it's a contribution perhaps.
All I would say is, look, people may have their views about the Muslim Council and about different aspects of how particular faith groups, ideological groups, whatever we wish to call them, interact with government. But the idea that they should not interact with government would be a very bad one. And so whether we are got criticisms or otherwise, we must find ways to continue dialogue and to integrate the thinking and so that people like us, whether we're parliamentarians, governments or otherwise, are understanding the issues at stake.
We're lucky enough to have Meg Munn here, who's a Foreign Office Minister.
It was certainly true in the past that the Muslim Council of Britain was an organisation with whom there was a lot of contact. What Ruth Kelly did when she was the Secretary of State of Community and Local Government and I was the Minister in that department was to make it very clear that we wanted to engage with organisations and groups who backed and supported the basic fundamental principles which the government stands for in terms of, without going into great detail, sort of democracy and not supporting, obviously, extreme groups and the like. And that was made very clear at that time and was certainly an issue which was debated long and hard among a wide group of people from the Islamic faith and the basis on which we work with, which was clearly that which supported democracy and freedom of speech.
Thanks. Okay.
My name is Fahmi Dabi and I run a group called Progressive British Muslims, and I guess I'm very much a secular Muslim. I wanted to go back to the point about definitions. I have a huge problem with words like Islamism and Islamist terrorists, because for me it is giving them what they want, it's giving them legitimacy and saying that they do define a part of the Muslim faith and they don't. And so every time that word is used in the media, it puts my back up, and it puts up the back, if I would have thought, 99% of Muslims. And so I think the government is quite right, and the opposition, not to use it. I think we need to find another word, because I think we need to describe them, but I just don't like that particular word, and I think a lot of other people don't either.
Yes. My name is Sharon Tabri. I'm from Radio Free Europe Radio Unity. I have a question and maybe a comment. Unfortunately, my question will be directly to Dennis McShane, but as he's gone now, I can let it with my panel and whoever wants to answer. Time and again, I mean, this question has been raised that what democracy means. Is it a universal term that has one meaning and one definition, or we have democracy which applies to Britain and democracy which applies to Afghanistan, for example, or Iraq? In my view, democracy is only one concept and cannot be different in any part of the world. And the reason that its dominant form of government or social order in one country and not in the other. It has its own historical reasons, which is a long legacy issue. I want to go there. But what I want to say, as someone who has its origins in a third world country or a non-democratic country, I want to say that many people, though they're not the dominant force, desire for a democratic society, have the desire for a democracy. So therefore, I want to know what is the panel's view on democracy, definition of democracy, is it one thing or universal or not? And the other thing on Islamism, I'm very sorry that our government is not, or the Foreign Office is not happy to distinguish or draw a line between Islamism and Islam. I think there is a huge gap between Islamism as a political ideology and Islam as a religion. And hopefully one day that would be put in practice as
Can we have Alan perhaps first? The point, Islamic terrorism, the word, and the second, the point made at the end there, Islamism and Islam.
I think it's a really difficult debate, and it's one that I've been talking to people within some of the new government organisations, RICU and so on, that have been set up to counter radicalisation, and that debate's ongoing. I would say this, that if we think of replacing the word Islamist with the word criminal, for instance, that Ed Hussein's book would end up being called The Thug or The Criminal, and it would make simply no sense in terms of his own story about where his radicalisation came from and so on, which ideas occurred to him, distortions of the faith and so on that he was taken in by, and where those ideas took him. If we kind of shut out the idea that it has those roots, we wouldn't really be able to understand the process of de-radicalisation or to further that ourselves. So if you look at the main Islamist theoreticians and so on, going back to Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb and Maududi and all of these figures, you do face an attempt, as Dan was saying, to use a faith, whether to distort a faith, to make that faith the basis of an ideological project, a political power and so on. So we need to be able to be aware of that and to challenge it in a way that I thought that Dan did superbly. But I agree with you that we have to be absolutely aware of the danger of giving people what they want in terms of the status of the interpreters of the faith and so on and so forth. So I haven't got any easy answer to that. I think there's different audiences at different times that you're relating to, and I think with an audience like this, I'm quite comfortable of saying, we face a threat of Islamism. I might not use the same kind of language in different settings elsewhere, perhaps, would be my answer to that one. If I could just say one word on the democracy question that you raised.
I'll come to that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Ladan.
I would also be leaning in favor of using Islamism, because then it will give Islam its autonomy and it will save Islam. We will have a concept where the real faith, of course this is subjective, but the faith that is closer to its real principle would be preserved, and those who are using it with a totalitarian mindset will have this ism that will link them to the real roots, which is fascism, Nazism, or this type of modern 19th century totalitarian mindset. So to me, I would be comfortable with distinguishing so that we could have a space for this faith to survive its crisis.
My concern is if we go down that route, that makes sense for everybody in this room. It doesn't make sense for 1.5 million people in Britain, let alone the billion or so people, Muslim people across the world. And for me, what it does is create an increasing chasm between the Muslims in the world who dismiss this minority in terms of ordinary Muslims as a whole as the problem. And I think it is very hard in the minds of ordinary Muslims to separate Islam and put that in one corner and put Islamists in another, because the reality of this is there's a shade of them, and there's an extreme group that nearly everybody dismisses. There's a majority that we all accept, and then there are people like the Muslim Brotherhood who are considered acceptable by some and not by others. And I think that works fine in intellectual circles. I think in the real political world it creates a chasm.
And how would you deal with it? Because your point is very well made, but What's the answer?
I think we, maybe I need to do a bit of thinking about this. I think we need to find another word. I don't think we should just necessarily accept Ed's term and use that because he's the first person in some ways to come up with a nice short-term term. I think we need to find another one. Maybe it's a job people have need to